Story 1. When the Dodge Viper first came out, my buddy and I agreed that if either of us ever won the lottery, the winner would buy us both matching Vipers. This agreement still stands. A few years back, I bought a scratch-off ticket after thinking, I haven't done one of these in forever. I won just enough to buy 2 Hot Wheels Vipers, so I sent him one, and he unboxed it on a live stream. Made me happy. Story 2. If I win it big, like hundreds of millions, I'm paying off my family and friends' mortgages. The freedom to save and not pay most of their incomes to live in a house would have a generational impact on their families. I don't play the lottery, but if I did. Story 3. A quiet house. Not a big house, but one with a lot of texture and spaces with varied character. Like a Japanese room, cozy, fluffy room, a bedroom like a silent tomb, a kitchen that can cook a dinner, a totofshlet, comfortable underfloor heating. Build it somewhere with trees and running water that gets dark at night. Enjoy the stars when possible. Story 4. I'm gonna rent a tanker ship, take it to the North Pole, fill it full of polar bears, drive it to the South Pole and let the polar bears eat all the penguins. Story 5. A man cave to hide from the world. A room with a 100-inch 4K 240Hz screen, Dolby Atmos sound with a 12.2 setup, and completely soundproofed with my collection of video game systems set up and ready to play by pushing a single button for each console. Just an awesome gaming place that is all mine, after retiring from my full-time job. Story 6. A bungalow-style home. By this, I mean all rooms on the ground level with some nice trees in the garden. A 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath will suffice. I have small dreams. Story 7. The empty lot behind my house so that nobody develops it and specifically takes down the trees that we love to see birds on. Just this week, we have seen white-tailed kites, vermilion flycatchers, and crested caracaras. I could sit on my patio around sunset with a pair of binoculars for hours every single day. I would plant some native vegetation and turn it into my own little mini nature reserve. Story 8. Entry-level housing. Sounds strange, I know. But living in Southern California, in a deeply conservative area, there is a constant fight between the state and county or city about low-income housing. Working in my industry, you get to interact with lawmakers on occasion and hear the challenges about things like over $2 billion being sent to the county over the last 5 years, which is just sitting in a bank account because the county refuses to use it for housing. So I want to build dorms, studio and 1-bedroom units with a common area for the kitchen and entertainment. 6 to 8 rooms per floor, 2 stories plus garage parking underneath so people can actually have a car. No stainless steel fixtures with granite countertops and travertine floors. Just someplace you can afford on minimum wage but not so comfortable that you want to keep living there for decades. Someplace the 18-year-old who was kicked out by their parents can afford while working a minimum wage job, or the newly divorced can afford while still paying child support. Not the kind of place you'd bring a date to, just someplace to help them before they end up in a worse situation. Now, I don't want to recreate the projects. There are a lot of programs for people in that kind of trouble. I want to make an option for people before they end up there. Story 9. All these boring, I would buy a house and not work, answers lead me to believe none of you have ever known the joy that a fast car or a nice boat can bring. Story 10. Keeping about 3 times what I think it would cost to never work again, then giving amounts to people so they can do what they love for the rest of their lives. Dream funding. Story 11. So after doing the generous thing of paying off family homes and stuff, I want a large house with wall-to-wall recessed bookcases in a library and a secret room to be a recreation of the bridge from Wrath of Khan. Story 12. A nice house with a large yard for privacy and a lawn care guy. Get a big theater room with about 16 seats where each seat is a massage chair, Dolby Atmos speakers, and a very expensive TV for movies. A fridge full of food with a deep freezer totally dedicated to shrimp. Story 13. My dream purchase would be a piece of land in the mountains, where I could build an eco-friendly, self-sustaining home. I would have solar panels, a greenhouse, and a little sanctuary for animals. Story 14. My purchase would not be something to own, as I find owning things a burden. I would spend the rest of my life traveling the world in considerable style. I might buy a small house once I am too old to get on a plane. Story 15. Just a home of my own. Mime. All mine. No more sharing, no more fear of abrupt ejection. Just safety and knowing it's mine for as long as I need and want it. Story 16, my time. That is all money is really worth. The ability to choose what I do, when I do it, and who I do it with. Money can't buy happiness, but it can buy freedom for me and those I love. That's happiness. Story 17, houses for close family, a good wardrobe, and enough things to live a comfortable family life and never need to work for someone else ever again. Donate the rest of the money over time to various charities that do good in the world and retire with a trip across the world and maybe one trip to space. That's it. Story 18. Here in Copenhagen, there are some old row houses and townhouses from the early 1900s made of yellow brick. They aren't very big, probably around 1,500 to 2,000 square feet, but I love their look and the fact that they are nestled in quiet streets with little yards in the middle of the city. However, they are quite expensive. Here's an example on the market for around $2 million. That's my lottery buy. Story 19. I've always said that I don't need a giant luxury home or cars, jets, and so on. But if I won the lottery, I would definitely have a house built on enough land to have my own nicely landscaped lazy river. No pool. Just a lazy river with an attached hot tub. It's the only luxury I want. Story 20. A cute little condominium with 2 bedrooms and 1.5 bathrooms. Garage. Little patio. Something I can maintain, that I can live in for the rest of my life, and not have to worry about too much in terms of upkeep. Story 21. Stability. I am not a flashy guy. I don't see myself buying a giant mansion or anything of that sort if I were to win the lottery. I legitimately want to be comfortable for the rest of my life, knowing that any bill or expense is manageable. That's the dream. I could see myself just buying a modest home and knowing that I have all the money I need to go on vacations, buy random things, or do whatever at my leisure. Story 22. I think about this a lot. My fantasy is always to give away large sums of money. The YouTube guy I watched for 5 years? Throw $50,000 at his Patreon. A guy on the street playing a masterclass in violin? Here's $10,000. Stuff like that. The Awesome Games Done Quick Marathon is on right now, and I think about how cool it would be to stand at the end and say, we raised $3 million for charity, but what if it was $4 million? Story 23. A condo in a 55-plus community for my mom. She's stuck in this cramped apartment complex because the rent is relatively lower since she has been there so long, but it's increasing. She's old enough to retire and can't afford to. I just want to pay cash for a nice place for her. Story 24. I just want to spend time at my top 2 bucket list locations, Mont Saint-Michel and Neuschwanstein, before I get too old to enjoy traveling to either of them. After that, just give me a nice little condo in a walkable city with good theater, and I'm happy. Story 25. Porsche 911 or Cayenne. Since I live by the water, a boat, I suppose. Probably stay in the same area but buy a bigger plot of land. Couple of acres is great. Story 26. I'd buy a small collection of my dream cars and a garage to keep them in. The top 5 would probably be 1. Lamborghini Aventador SV. 2. Lamborghini Huracan Sturato. 3. Late 1980s Porsche 911 Turbo. 4. C3 Corvette. 5. Cadillac ZSV. Story 27. A mechanic shop with space to store project cars. I would not even work on other people's cars. It would be for my siblings and me to store our vehicles and work on them. I actually had a guy offer to sell me his shop once, as he was retiring, and it planted the idea in my head. Story 28. After getting rid of debt, a Citroën BX4 TC, a Citroën BX19 GTI 16V, and a plane hangar somewhere remote where I can spend my time having fun fixing hydraulic leaks in peace. Story 29. Depends on how much the win is. Below 50 million, it would be pretty typical, but anything above that, and I'm kickstarting the Planetary Renewal Initiative as a full-time job. Story 30. 1-story home, 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, about 2,500 square feet. Closed-off kitchen as I dislike open concept. Lots of wall space. At least 5 acres, more is better. At least one of those acres cleared for plants and our chickens. An extra space, climate-controlled, for rescuing cats or a safe place for strays. Not too far out of reach, also far enough from neighbors, but close enough that I can bike to one if I need something. Story 31. I know a point overlooking Lake Superior where I would build a house if I had a lot of money. It would probably cost $1 million just to build a road, buy the land, clear the area, and put infrastructure in place before you could even start the house. But it would be awesome. Story 32. A big piece of off-grid property so I can get away from people. As long as I have a good internet connection, I'd be golden. Maybe buy some farm animals and have a good old time. Oh, and a baby goat. Those things are absolutely adorable. Story 33. A farm or piece of land that I can turn into a stray rescue. Something about having a place where I can run around with a bunch of happy puppies makes my heart skip. Story 34. Honestly, just a modest house with enough money in the bank to pay my bills and food, plus splurge when I feel like it. My first splurge, however, would be to go on the vacation of my dreams and finally check off all the countries I've always wanted to go to. Story 35. It's easy to make $1 million if you start with 10 million. Personally, I would probably get into building houses. Buy vacant land and build a few middle-class houses. Sell them, and continue to grow the business by building more homes. One day, I would turn my lottery winnings into a home construction empire. Story 36. A valid passport so I can travel. I want to go to Download, Wacken, and Rock in Rio to get some international travel going. Then, when I get back to the United States, I'll go to Washington, District of Columbia, so I can spend at least a week checking out the Smithsonian. Story 37. Going to Egypt and standing next to, and possibly inside, the Great Pyramid and crying out of awe for the lost secret knowledge of our ancient ancestors compared to this shared delusion we live in presently. Story 38. Relatively small lottery. A ski-in/ski-out condo at one of the British Columbia resorts and a vehicle to keep there. Big lottery. The above, plus construct a permanent facility for the kendo Japanese fencing club I run. Every kendo instructor I know talks about building the lottery dojo because we all rent space in a school or community center or similar place and would love to have a real dojo. Those, plus ensuring financial security for my family members. Story 39. I would build a house with a chef's kitchen, a shop with lifts, and a man cave area with pool tables, foosball tables, and arcades, as well as a barn and pasture for my wife's horses and our goats. Then we would probably go to the pound and rescue every old dog we could find to let them live out their lives in luxury. Story 40. I would buy up a lot of properties in a small village where I own a rental house now. I would build as many new houses as I could and then rent them all. My tenant in the current house will become the property manager of the entire complex. I would at least give him the chance. Story 41. Just for kicks, I went to an open house for a brand new house on the beach. It was designed to be hurricane-proof and storm surge-proof. It would stay in place. There were so many amazing features, including a saltwater aquarium that was the divider between the library and the family room. Massive and beautiful. There was a big infinity pool. I could go on, but that would be my dream. It was $7 million then, probably twice that or more now. Story 42. I went to an Airbnb once that had a really nice bidet. I cannot stress enough how life-changing this bidet was. It was like sitting on a bed of clouds with little angels massaging my butt cheeks. This bidet had temperature-controlled water, a temperature-controlled seat, different water cycle presets that it uses to spray you, a blow dryer, customizable personal settings, so if you like your preferences for specific durations, it all happens with one button when you set it up. A remote with a holster attaches to a wall, and there is auto-sanitation after you are done. The toilet even says goodbye in a soothing robot voice when you get up and flush. I looked up the exact model and it was over $1,000. I wouldn't tell anybody if I won the lottery, but there would be signs. Those signs may include me spending a lot more time in the bathroom. Story 43. The 1980s Ferrari Testarossa that Don Johnson drove in Miami Vice. Just the model, not the actual car. But hey, I won the lottery, so maybe I could look for the actual car. Story 44. I would probably start building a bunch of orphanages for children in Africa whose parents died of human immunodeficiency virus. and probably some free adjacent schools so they could substantially improve their lives after they get older. Story 45. A little house with a yard so my kids can have the trampoline they wish for, and my wife can have the house she wishes for. I could move an hour or two away and afford it, but the downside of ripping apart every social relationship we have makes it not worth it. Story 46. I am legitimately going to be that sap. I would open a Norse pagan LGBTQ+ center and support Longhouse. Then I'll open a rave nightclub with a social outreach program for young adults. $500,000 to $1 million and then just support my dream and work on that being self-sufficient. Wouldn't tell a soul. Story 47. Always wanted to buy a big piece of land in Scotland that I can keep wild and hire people with experience of homelessness to look after it while providing accommodation on the land. A lot of people I have worked with who have experienced homelessness have post-traumatic stress disorder, and traditional housing doesn't suit them. This would provide housing and jobs away from people and keep a beautiful part of the world wild and natural. Story 48. To buy back my grandparents' old lake house. They bought it back in a time when living on the river was looked down upon. My mom tells me stories where she was called a river rat all through elementary and high school. I spent a lot of summers with my granddad fishing and boating. He was later diagnosed with cancer, and between the distance from the nearest hospital and money for his treatments, they sold the house for nearly 30 times what they paid for it back in the 1960s. It's been 18 years since they moved, and he has since passed. But I still have dreams about him and the house. Miss you, Granddad.